Okay, as promised, we're going to continue this presentation by R.C. Sproul on election predestination.
You will. And Paul uses this illustration to drive home the point that this was done to show the purpose of God's electing mercy, and to make it absolutely clear that our election is not based on who runs and who wills, but rather on the sovereignty of God. That's the critical point that Paul is making here. Now, some people try to get around this text by saying Paul's not talking here about the election of individuals. He's talking about the election of nations, that out of Jacob comes the nation Israel, and out of Esau comes the Edomites, or the Arab nations that were opposed to Christianity. Well, the answer to that is easy and quick. There are no nations except groups that are made up of individuals. And the point that Paul is making here is a point that he specifically speaks of with respect to individuals. One individual was chosen and one individual was not. Jacob was chosen, Esau was not. And neither was chosen because of foreseen, actual, or potential anything that either one of them did or would ever do. That their election, the apostle labors, is based upon the sovereign purposes of God to show forth his grace. Now, the other thing that I think is very important for us to see in this text is something that we will look at in more detail later, but just for now, in closing, is the response that immediately Paul gives. Paul anticipates the question that is raised every time this doctrine is taught. The first question we have is, how is that fair? If God chooses one and not the other, and it's not based on what we do. If it were based on what we do, we could see how it would be fair, right? But Paul anticipates that when he makes the next statement. What shall we say then? Is there unrighteousness in God? And what answer does he give to his own question? Some translations read, by no means. Other translations read, God forbid. The reason for that is that the word that is used here in the Greek is the most emphatic term of denial possible in the language. I mean, the answer that Paul is giving to the question, is there unrighteousness in God? The answer is absolutely not. Now let me ask you this, be honest. Who has ever raised this objection or protest to the Presbyterian view? Or to the Arminian view? One of the things that confirms my conviction that I'm understanding what Paul is saying here is that he is anticipating a particular objection, which objection would never come if he were teaching the idea that God's election is based upon what we do. Because if God's election were based upon what we do, no one would ever raise a voice of protest saying, that's not fair, if indeed it were based on what we do. We have a fundamental idea of fairness, that people are judged according to their behavior, according to their actions, according to their responses, from merit and punishment and all the rest. But Paul knows that people are going to struggle with this because they see that what the apostle is saying is that in the case of Jacob and Esau, their salvation was planned from the foundation of the world by God in his sovereign election without any respect to anything either one of them ever did. By God. I want to say to those of you who do not have faith in Jesus Christ right now, that if you do not at this moment have faith in Christ, there is no reason whatsoever to assume your non-election. Because every person who has ever come to faith in Christ has had a period in their life that preceded that moment of faith, and all of the elect who come to faith at one time were unbelievers. And you may very well be numbered among the elect and have not yet realized your election. And one of the most important questions that the New Testament raises to us, or admonitions given, is that we make our election and calling sure. And if you don't know if you're numbered among the elect, I can't think of a more important question for you to focus your attention upon until you know the answer to that question than that one. And here's some good news. If you're struggling about that question, that's not proof positive that you are elect, but it's a good sign, because most of the non-elect could care less, ever, about being reconciled with God. But we'll look further at these difficult questions in our next session.
Okay, so that concludes this broadcast. So, hope you've enjoyed it. Hope that it's beneficial to you and clear to understand. And we'll see what comes available next time.